As some of you might know, I am on the road doing a little bit of traveling. Um, there is a garden that was in the Rockefeller family until just a few years ago. It's now under the care of a public trust kind of thing. But a few years ago, they had a Buddhist stele. It's like a rock carving from China from the 6th century. And it was in the garden. But now they have moved that to a museum in Boston. I think the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, to be protected from the elements. Then in the spot where that stele used to sit, they have made an exact replica. And so this weekend, they have organized a rededication event where one of the leading professors, Professor Dorothy Wong, will be giving a lecture on the significance of these types of Buddhist, like a statue, this kind of Buddhist carving. Then after that, I'm supposed to do a reconsecration of this object. And so I'm up in the New England area. Right now I'm in Boston with, those of you who know, I'm visiting with Brianna and Joel and Nima, and they are right over there. These are their books. I'm very jealous. Books, books, books. My home, my space, I have no space to have books. All my books are still in my basement, all 15, 20 boxes of them. They're still in the dungeons. So then when we talked about setting up this morning, I said, the books, let's set up in front of the books. Okay, so anyway, let's start with the opening recitations. Yeah. Dala Dhamma Jebe Dra Nobar Jebe Ge Tarba Dan Tam Je Kembe Bardu Chopra Jeba Tam Je Ge Se Jebe Ma Nang Ka Dang Nam Pe Sen Chen Tam Je Dewa Dan Den Dung Ao Dan Dr Nerdu Lana Me Pa Yang Dobra Zobe Janju Rinpo Je Dobra Ja Dala Dhamma Jebe Dra Nobar Jebe Ge Tarba Dan Tam Je Kembe Bardu Chopra Jeba Tam Je Ge Se Jebe Ma Nang Ka Dang Nam Pe Sen Chen Tam Je Dewa Dan De Dung Ao Dan Dre Nerdu Lana Me Pa Yang Dabra Zobe Janju Rinpo Je Dobra Ja Dala Dhamma Jebe Dra Nobar Jebe Ge Tarba Dan Tam Je Kembe Bardu Chopra Jeba Tam che ge se je be ma nang ka dang nyam pe sen chen tam che de wa tang de dung yao dang zhe nu du la na me pa yang tam pra so pe chan chu ren po che tong pra ja de je de sam ma ge ki bar du long a yi sum ge wa la ko ma shi bar du long a yi sum ge wa la ko du te ring ne sun de ne ma san da sam ye bar du lung a ye sun ke wa la ko san je jo dan su ge jo nam la chan je par du da ne kyab se je da ge jin su ge be sun nam ge jo la pen je san je zhu bra shu san je jo dan su ge jo nam la chan je par du da ne kyab se je dāgi jinsu kibi sunang ki dhula penche sanje dhubra shu sanje chodang suki chonam la chanchu bardu dhane gyabsu je dāgi jinsu kibi sunang ki dhula penche sanje dhubra shu kada nyambe senjen tamje dewa dan dewe gendan dhampra gyuji dunga dan dunya ki gyudan dhruva gyuji Dunga me pe dewa dang me dewa ye je ne rin cha da ni dang dewa dang nyang la ne pra kyu je ma na ka da nyang pe sen chen tam je dewa da dewa gen dan dang pra kyu je dunga dang dunga je ge dan dewa kyu je dunga me pe dewa dang me dewa kyu je ne rin cha da ni dang dewa dang nyang la ne pra kyu je ma na kada nyampe senchen tamche dewa da dewe gyunda dempra gyuji dunya dang dunya ki gyudan dewa gyuji dunya mepe dewa dame dewa gyuji nerin chadang nidang dewa tanya la nebra gyuji. Then now in the different languages, the seven branch puja. In all the worlds of the 10 directions reside Tathagatas of the 3 times. Before each of you, lions among humans, I prostrate joyfully with body, speech, and mind by the power of this aspiration to noble deeds. All conquerors appear vividly in my mind, with as many bodies as there are atoms in all lands. I prostrate to all you conquerors. In each atom are Buddhas, numberless as atoms, all in the midst of the heirs of the Buddhas. Thus I conceive of this Dharma Dhatu as completely filled with you conquerors in this way, with infinite oceans of praise and oceans of diverse melodies. I sing the excellent qualities of all you conquerors and praise all of you gone to bliss with the best flowers and best garlands, best music, ointments, and excellent parasols, finest lamps, and superior incense I offer to you conquerors with excellent garments and best fragrances and sandalwood powder, heap high as Mount Meru, all wondrous offerings perfectly arranged. I offer to you, conquerors, these vast and unequal offerings to each and every one of you, conquerors, with the power of conviction and noble deeds. I prostrate and offer to all you conquerors all the harmful deeds that I have done with my body, speech, and mind, under the power of desire, hatred, and ignorance. I confess each and every one of them. I rejoice in all the meritorious deeds of all conquerors in the 10 directions and the heirs of the Buddhas, solitary realizers, hearers still in training and beyond, and all wandering beings. You who are lamps of the worlds of the 10 directions, who have unobstructedly attained Buddhahood through the stages of Bodhi. All you who are my protectors, please turn the unexhaled wheel of Dharma. With palms together, I earnestly beseech you who may intend to manifest final nirvana. Please remain for as many eons as there are atoms in the world, for the happiness and well-being of all wandering beings. Whatever slight virtue that may have been gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate to complete Bodhi. Now the mandala offering. So shi pugi ju shi me to dram ri la len shi nin de gemba de san je shin du me te puwa ye chogo nam da shin la ke war sho ku sun yong so la me cho nam la chi nang sang sun de shin ni ki ju da lu long cho nang si yong she la la me chu ge ngo de zo du so cha so wa dang ju jing sha ba da 只是依然苦心所话，也给我从在大业之上吧。他们接受被长者之我，om guru deva。Dhagini rana mandala pradeja so Semche namki sambadan lo ye jidra jidava jejung dhumung tenpa ye choki kolo korudu so Ndurje chanchen tele naroda mami tapo padu jiden kong katen chunden sawe la me shasa ju la ma yidam chokyong la sowa dep sada ji jin ji lo kya tengi tome samlenge Drabe tong sung yang la kya tsome kya wadu je chang pa jiden kong pe shala du du tato samgyo kya le me chin chin lo shi shiru je chen nenge man pa sa ne kya Semto de do dobra jin ji lo hong jin yu jin de zang sang pe ma ke sa tong pa la ya sen chokyong wan drum ne Pema june she she dra go do kando mampu go ro ke je se tha lu ke jin je lo je she so go ro pema se de hong o men chu ge yin ge po dan le tu sun san je kun jing ong wen ni ran sen chu gu ngong sun tong se ba za we la me sham la so wa de So we continue on chapter 5 of Bodhicharyavatara. This is the chapter on vigilant introspection, which means like careful mental scrutiny. So although, as we learn, although this is the title is introspection, in Pali is sampajana, which is like, if you translate from the Pali, sometimes it's translated as like kind of perfect sight, or it has the connotation of like what you know and not forget through the faculty of mindfulness. So mindfulness means that what you know and not forget with regards to what the Buddha taught is to be adopted and discarded, to be practiced and to give up. That knowledge here is to be applied into life situations from moment to moment, so that when there is a threat of afflictive emotions taking hold and then doing mischief, immediately you see that and you stop it. So that's the gist of this chapter. So the section we looked at last time is these verses from 29 to 33, where Shantideva tells us how to be mindful. He first takes the approach of saying, if necessary, if you turn your mind to understanding how dangerous the lack of mindfulness is, not remembering the Buddha's teachings, especially when difficult situations arise, if you remember, what kind of consequences that can lead to. So the language of rebirth in lower realms. As I said, rebirth in lower realms, you don't even need to wait until, you discard this body and find yourself, born in a lower realm. Even while walking in this human body, we all have experienced the sufferings of being stuck in a lower realm. So Shantideva says, if you remember that, so this sounds like, it's like I joked about how in English, in the US we say, to scare the bejesus out of you. So he does use that. He says you can use that, then you become more vigilant. You won't so easily forget, because it's easy to forget the Buddha's teachings. And sometimes we forget the Buddha's teachings because we're having so much fun. But other times we forget the Buddha's teachings because we are suffering so much. So here, the first one, he says, you can do that. So healthy fear, properly placed, utilized fear can have its place in our practice. The next, he says, to receive good counsel, that meaning advice, to receive good counsel, to be in the presence of those guides and teachers that inspire us to cultivate these mental qualities. He says that is another way that can help us build up this mindfulness. Then the third, he reminds us, he says, if we are able to feel the presence of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, whom we say we admire so much, whom we say we want to model our lives after, whom we say we want to achieve the same level as these great beings, If we can remember that their wisdom mind, their compassionate heart pervades everything, is everywhere, then you can say it is as if, they are with us. And because we care not to disappoint them, again, footnote, from the other perspective, not that they can be disappointed, but from our side, we feel like, no, we should not, disappoint them. So that can also serve as another way, another incentive for us to be mindful. So now, starting on verse 34, um, in this section from verse 34 to 44, in Khenpo Kunpel's textual outline of this text, he identifies this as the purifying of the actions of body, speech, and mind. So body, speech, and mind are what constitutes, right, how karma arises. Karma first arises in the mind, then some of these initially mental karma turn into speech karma and action karma, physical actions. And so, in a way, we could say that the entire path to awakening is about purifying actions of body, speech, and mind. And so here, just a short section of 10 verses where Shantideva turns his attention to how in our practice of our focus on purifying, refining body, speech, and mind, what is the role of this topic of this chapter, vigilant introspection, in the work of purifying body, speech, and mind? So let's read those verses in this section. If at the outset, when I check my mind, I find that it is tainted with some fault, I shall be still and self-possessed, unmoving like a piece of wood. I shall never vacantly allow my gaze to wander all around, but rather with a focused mind will always go with eyes cast down. But that I may relax my gaze, I'll sometimes raise my eyes and look around. And if there are some people standing in my sight, I'll look at them and greet them with a friendly word. And yet, to spy the dangers on the road, I'll scrutinize the four directions one by one. And when I stop to rest, I'll turn around, look behind me, back along my way. I will survey the land in front, behind, and carry on, or else retrace my steps. In every time and place, therefore, I'll know my needs and act accordingly. My body shall remain like this, embarking thus upon a given course. From time to time, I'll verify, inquiring how my body is disposed. This rampant elephant, my mind, once tied to that great post, reflection on the teachings, must now be watched with all my strength, that it might never slip away. Those who strive to master concentration should never for an instant be distracted. They should always watch their minds, inquiring, where is now my mind engaged? When this becomes impossible, in case of danger or festivities, I'll act as it seems best, for it is taught that rules of discipline may be relaxed in times of generosity. When something has been planned and started on, attention should not drift to other things. With thoughts fixed on the chosen target, that and that alone should be pursued. Behaving in this way, all tasks are well performed, and nothing is achieved by doing otherwise. If thus we act, the secondary defilement, lack of introspection, will not grow. Yeah, so in this section, mm, mm, Shantideva gives, some very kind of specific examples of how to conduct body and speech, how to like kind of conduct yourself when walking, when seeing people. So some very concrete examples are given here. So verse 34 says, if the moment you recognize that some afflictive emotion is arising, and if we're not careful, we feed it, then it will turn into a big fire. So there's a spark of afflictive emotion that has turned up, and we see it. And he says, then, be still, meaning don't act. When you feel, that, oh, I'm going to lash out at someone with my tongue, he says, be still like a piece of wood. Don't act. If you feel like you're going to hit someone now, most of us, I think, don't find ourselves in the day and time that we live in, that we hit people so much. I hope most of us don't find ourselves in those situations. So for most of us right now, it's more speech. And then the speech includes, writing angry things, writing spiteful things and posting them or sending them. So speech with fingers, speech with mouth, primarily, I think, where we are. It says, don't act. Be still. This is not a don't act, be still, and pretend that the problem is not there. This is don't act out, don't lash out, be still, and self-possessed, meaning regain control. Or simply, as we say, cool down before you decide to do this or to do that. In the old days, I'm not that old, but I can still say in the old days, when you get angry at someone, it's not that instant, that you can lash out, you know. If they have a phone, you call them, the phone might ring and ring and ring and ring. They're not home. And ring and ring and ring. You call and they're not home. uh, and so even if you want to lash out, it's not so easy. Then if they don't have a phone, you think of writing a letter, and writing a letter, also, uh, uh, also takes time, And sometimes you write. It's like, oh, no stamps, It's like, oh, you got to go buy stamp, Then things are not so fast, You have a chance to rethink and reconsider. Maybe that's unnecessary. Then it's easier to dissipate, But now everything is so fast, The minute you are not happy, you can shoot off a text message. You can send, even now, a video of angrily yelling at someone. And then because you can send it so quickly, you say, even if they're not there, never mind, I've sent it, The minute they turn on their phone or they have signal again, I will get to yell at them. So everything is going really fast now. Maybe that's why it says, in these times, sometimes it says the Vajrayana practices can be very effective because Vajrayana is also very fast. But then, of course, now dangers are very fast, solutions are very fast, and basically everything is very fast. If you don't have enough skill to handle all these fast things, it also, you can get run over by all these fast things. So, so here Shantideva, I think is reminding us, in part, whether you are living in the old days or present day, it's always good that, when you see afflictive emotion arising, you turn yourself into a log of wood. Or sometimes elsewhere it says, be like a corpse, a dead body. You can't act. Don't lash out so immediately, so quickly. Sometimes this lashing out, it's not even like it's concealed under a pile of blankets, so to say.
that takes the appearance of, I want to quickly fix this problem. I want to quickly solve this problem. I don't want this problem to grow and fester. And sometimes it's really, you think you're motivated by something that makes sense, you know, but because of the heat of the moment, because we don't have perspective, because we are caught up in the heat of the moment, we want to kind of get it done with right now. And myself, I know I have that, you know, I want to get it, you know, resolve this right now, you know, but with that, you know, because of lack of clarity and emotions are strong, you say things and do things that you have no idea how sharp those words are to other people. Then, you know, you cause hurt. Then things get more complicated. So whether it's in Shantideva's time, where things are a lot slower, or now where things are really fast, this advice of like, you know, I should be still and self-possessed, unmoving like a piece of wood. This is good advice. These next few verses, when I, You know, when you read these next few verses, 35 to 38, right? Some of us might think, oh, this is so prescribed. This is so like, you know, oh, you have to do this. And some of us might read this and then we are very obedient, you know. Then we say, oh, I'm going to do that, you know. Then it becomes like, it can become like very rigid, you know. You're like, I have to follow this exactly. But if we, in a less artificial way, try to cultivate, cultivate means like with intention, with attention and intention, we say we want to grow these qualities that's expressed in these 4 verses here, and work on cultivating the mind, the state of mind that results in when you walk a certain way, your gaze, your sight is in a certain way. It can become something very natural, and it really helps to gather in our attention, our mindfulness, our vigilant introspection, so that we are on guard, not in the way that, you know, that is like stressful on guard, but stressless on guard. So I can say this because I have seen examples of practitioners who are able to do this, even in the midst of, you know, not just like people who live in the forest or jungle, people involved in practitioners who have day-to-day responsibilities, meetings to attend, donors to meet, you know, disciples to guide. So I have one teacher in Malaysia. I've often said this. This Venerable Wayu, to me, really exemplified this. He's the head of a large organization, you know. Whenever you see him, he comes down, he walks to the dining hall. His sight, it's not the, you know, left, right, up, down, you know. His sight is in front, cast down. From time to time, he naturally lifts up, sees people, acknowledges, nods, you know. If he needs to have a word, he'll have a word, and he comes back. And in a very natural way. He doesn't present himself as I'm a meditation master, I'm this, I'm that, but you can see it, you know, as an inequality. And this really comes from not so much restraining the body per se, it comes from a certain attitude of mind and deliberately cultivating those attitudes. And it's very inspiring. It's like they are just individuals like this. It's like they are just like walking through, you know, a storm, completely undisturbed, you know. All the chaos could be like, you know, unfolding. Yeah. And we all know, you know, like as a head of a big organization, doesn't matter, Buddhist organization, sometimes even worse. Yeah? In Buddhist organization, everyone's emotions are being refined. So people can get very sensitive very quickly. But the ability to just kind of walk through the storm, you know, completely undisturbed. To me, these verses 35 to 38 is even though it sounds very specific, but it can be applied by any of us. And if we're able to cultivate those qualities, it's very useful. It also brings calm to other people. 35 says, I shall never vacantly allow my gaze to wander around. So, like, kind of just look here, look there, look here, look there, but rather with a focused mind. So, this is talking about when, even if walking, yes, or even sitting around, when you become more and more interested in kind of cultivating the mind, again, it's not like you're forcing, but you become more aware of how especially your sight can affect the mind, often more than the other senses. That your sight in particular will stir up the mind. And it's almost like when you realize, when you become more aware of how often the mind gets stirs up by sight, that you see the amount of activity that is going on that is ultimately unnecessary, if not actually harmful. If they're not actually harmful, these stirrings, but you'll see how they are unnecessary in the sense that they are taking energy out of you. So then you quite naturally just want to stop that kind of unnecessary waste. You become more willing to just content, to just be not be wasting your attention and your energy that way. Then you settle. You let your sight settle. You let body settle. You let mind settle. So with a focused mind, we're always with eyes cast down. So this is saying, don't be so busy. So the rest of the world will tell us all the ways we need to be busy. So the rest of the world will tell us, give us all kinds of reasons why we need to be busy. So now it's good to remember Buddha's teaching, Shantideva's reminder that it's also good to learn how to be not so busy. So this settled body, speech, and mind, it's important to know that, although we use the word relax, right, and settled and not so busy, right, it's also important to know that, to note that we're not talking about a dull state of mind. We're not talking about like, okay, you have gone half asleep, because you're not, uh, ordinarily we're so used to like, if you're awake, you have to be looking here, looking there, looking here, looking there, doing this, doing that, right? Then when we say, oh, you let it settle, then we think, oh, this is like falling half asleep. But no, here we're not talking about falling half asleep. It's when the mind and the body is focused. So it's sharp. The mind is clear and sharp and luminous. The body is at ease. But in a way, you could say that, when necessary, when something comes up, the body can respond very immediately, because attention and presence is there. So this is a very present state of mind. It's not a dull state of mind. So we have to, distinguish these two. So it's so kind of present rather than absent or, unconscious state of mind. So that in 36 it says, but that I may relax my gaze, meaning it's a very focused state of mind, even though we say relax, but it's not the way we ordinarily relax. Ordinarily, when relax, we are like just let loose, and there is no awareness, or awareness has gone to some fantasy scenario situation where we feel good. It's not that kind of relax. It's mind is present, mind is alert, but not like stressed alert, stress present. It's natural presence. So then 36 says, but that I may relax my gaze. So the gaze, when it says the sight is not looking around here and there, because now in a way it's like laser sharp that is resting here. And then 36 says, but so that I may relax this a little. So it says also kind of naturally, you don't need to always have your sight downwards. It says you look down a little bit, you look up rather, and look around. It says, you raise my eyes and look around. And if there are some people standing in my sight, then I look at them and greet them with a friendly word. So it's also balancing this up and say, you're not like, I'm in such a state of mental absorption, that I ignore everything. This is not talking about formal meditation. This is talking about how we carry this training of the mind into everyday life. And then he says also, it's good, it's necessary. Don't forget, from time to time, relax your laser sharp attention with your sight cast down and look a little bit. If you see people, you recognize people who know you, have a word, have a greeting, have a friendly word. So it says, do that. 37 is about, something more active, but this is 36 first. Then 37 is talking about something practical, especially during Shantideva's time, because when travelers go from place to place walking there are dangers, along the journey, right? Robbers. And so here it can be applied in our times, like it's not like you are your awareness and your mindfulness, is so sharp and so, needs to be so focused that you're oblivious to potential dangers. So these days, our dangers might not be uh, the kind of dangers that Shantideva is talking about. But like crossing the road, all kinds of vehicular dangers. Or some of us might live in places where, yeah, the security is not so good. And, there are people that might rob you or steal your things. And so it says, like you will scrutinize the four direction one by one. And so be aware. So this is talking about this kind of mental training is not like a turtle pulling up all its limbs and entering into the shell and shutting out the world. This is very practical. This is like, you don't need to practice like a turtle pulling up and shutting in. Yeah. So this is how you kind of carry these practices into the world. So when you are in situations where you need to scrutinize, to be aware of potential dangers or problems, you attend to that. And then here it says, when I stop to rest, I'll turn around and look behind me. Again, it's practical, especially in his time, like you never know what's behind, So take a look. It's saying, be aware of your surroundings. So 38, I will survey the land in front, behind, and carry on, or else retrace my steps. So this means, like, no, am I lost where I'm going? Or, am I on the right course? In every time and place, therefore, I'll know my needs and act accordingly. So this one can also be a poetic way of saying, like you always have to assess, am I headed in the right direction with my practice? Or should I retrace my steps? Do I see how far I have come? So this is also a metaphor, not just about, literally walking on the road and seeing people. It can also be a metaphor for our progress along the path. So there are dangers, there are sidetracks on the path. We want to see, we want to know where we are. We want to see how far we have come. Rejoice in that. We have to assess, am I still headed in the right direction, or do I need to retrace my steps and go back to where the road branched and I took the wrong turn? All of that. So let's take a break now, a short break.
wage jware mum, wage jware mum. Wage jware mum, wage jware mum. Wage jware mum, wage jware mum.
So verse 39, my body shall remain like this. Embarking thus upon a given course, from time to time I'll verify, inquiring how my body is disposed. So here again, very practical, very kind of, this is not abstract, this is saying, like that first line, my body shall remain like this. That is about awareness, mindfulness of body. How often are we, reflective enough, aware enough to say, right now, my body is like this. It's not like this as a concept. What it's talking about is being aware, like, my body is like this. Then the next part is, it says, then if you decide you're going to do something now, you're going to physically kind of, even if it is like, oh, I'll switch to this side of this chair. You do it, it says, but even as you go about physically doing other things, he says, from time to time, you will check in, so to say, with the body, inquiring, how is this body disposed? How is this body placed? Meaning, so this is verse 39 is mindfulness of body. Mindfulness of body in relation to sometimes called the four positions, meaning sitting, laying down, standing, and walking. So there are descriptions of how the Buddha places his body when he's sitting, how the Buddha lays down, how the Buddha stands, how the Buddha walks. So these are given as examples of being in the body, carrying the body with awareness and mindfulness. So this is verse 39. So this mind, which he compares now to like this rampant elephant. So we've seen him comparing to the mind to the elephant before. Before he talked about, the mind is like a drunken elephant. So I said that in the past, right? And naturally, elephants could get drunk when they eat fermented fruits. And then when they get drunk like that, very dangerous. They could like wipe out a whole village, a herd of elephants, cause a lot of harm. Then in some cases, it's actually elephants were also used as war weapons, like a tank, ancient tank. So in the ancient military, they will deliberately feed alcohol to elephants, and elephants will, create a lot of destruction while fighting the enemy. But as well, elephant in Indian culture is also associated with royalty. So when the elephant is under control, well guarded, well trained, it's a symbol of royalty and power and stability. So kings and emperors would ride on elephants, right? And then the elephant herd, there's using this device called an elephant hook. It's just a very small device, but there is somewhere I learned that, in the ear, neck area of the elephant that is sensitive. And the elephant trainer knows to just slightly using that metal hook to tug a little bit, an elephant becomes, very obedient. If the elephant shows any signs of being distracted, all the elephant trainer needs to do is pull that, hit that spot with the hook. So the hook is very small compared to the elephant. So this hook sometimes is called the hook of mindfulness. So here it says, this rampant elephant, my mind. Here it says, once it is tied to the great post, which is reflection on the teachings, meaning mindfulness, awareness of not forgetting what the Buddha taught. Now, once we have succeeded in doing that, in teaching, in not forgetting the Buddha's teachings, now must be watched with all my strength that it might never slip away. So meaning, don't take for granted, that your mind will always remember these teachings. So you have to watch with vigilance. So 34 to 39, those verses primarily is about knowing your body, settling your body. Then 40 to 44 is about knowing the mind, settling the mind, watching the mind. So then under the body part, settling the body, knowing the body, speech is included. As I said, don't lash out, don't respond so quickly when just watch body, watch speech. Now, verses 40 to 44 is the mind. So 41, it says, especially those of you who strive to master concentration, then from moment to moment, you should train not to be distracted. Distractions is the main cause of wandering in samsara. In the Mahamudra teachings, it says, the single highway, you could say, the single 18 lanes highway of all Buddhas is undistracted mind. Is undistracted, is the continuity of undistracted presence and awareness. That's the road that all Buddhas, all Bodhisattvas travel on in order to arrive at the Buddha state. Is this undistracted presence and awareness and the knowing mind, knowingly present. So there's two levels to relating to this mind. On the relative level, we relate to this mind by, which is primarily what is taught in this section. On the relative level, we relate to this mind by scrutinizing to see if there are mental defilements that needs to be purified, needs to be removed, needs to be discarded. That's on the relative level, which is primarily what Shantideva is talking about here. But through that approach of mentally being alert, present, so that mental defilements can be purified, can be removed, then the more we do that, the more what we will then develop is direct access to Buddha mind, the pure and pristine knowing. This knowing is Buddha. And this knowing mind, this mind that knows without dust, without stains, without mental defilements, right? This knowing mind becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. That is the undistracted knowing that we're talking about. The 18-lane highway to Buddhahood is this knowing mind. But this knowing mind, on the relative level, we do have to train so that mental defilements don't stain it, don't cover it. So even like in the, for example, in the Pali Canon, in the Anguttara Nikaya, in there, there is this passage that says that the mind, its nature is naturally clear and luminous and pristine, pure. And for those disciples who know that, Buddha says, then they know how to train to remove mental defilements. Then they become the noble ones. But for those disciples, he says, or for those individuals who are not disciples, meaning they don't train their mind, they don't know that actually this mind's nature is clear, luminous, and pristine. Therefore, they see no way out because the way they experience their mental emotions, mental emotional states is they experience it as concrete. They experience it as, there, permanently there. And then they think the mind is always, that its nature is miserable. So then they are not inspired to remove the mental defilements. So then they remain ordinary beings. So even in the Anguttara Nikaya, in Tibetan Buddhist terms, we say that's the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. And normally we say, Mahamudra, Buddha nature teachings is only in the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, but already in the first turning of wheel of Dharma, Buddha already taught this actually, the nature of this mind. And this is a point that Kyopa Jigten Sumgon, founder of Drigum Kagyu, emphasizes a lot. He says all three turnings are perfect, complete. It's just that those of us who have, whether we have the capacity to see it or not, is what makes the difference. So Kyopa Jigten Sumgon says, already in the first turning, Buddha already taught what this nature of this mind is like. So it's good for us to know some of these things. So in the pair of verses that opens the Dhammapada, again, Dhammapada from Tibetan perspective, it's often classified as the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, the first set of basic teachings the Buddha gave. But already in that opening verses of the Dhammapada, it sets out very clearly. It says, the difference between suffering and happiness, the difference between samsara and nirvana, is simply a matter of a mind that is obscured or unobscured. That means the nature of mind is already pure and pristine. But where all the difference comes from, why there are sentient beings and why there are Buddhists, why there is samsara and why there is nirvana, is a matter of the absence of the presence of obscurations. And so here we say, so the ultimate is without obscurations, but that ultimate nature without obscurations, if we don't apply the relative methods to clear obscurations, then we could go around mouthing with our mouths, and philosophizing, oh, third turning, oh, nature of mind is like this, like this, like that, oh, Dzogchen is like this, like that, oh, Rigpa is like this, like that. It's all useless. So we have to rely on these relative methods, which in this section, Shantideva puts it in very practical terms. So practical that sometimes we are misled by it. We say, oh, this is just Indian culture. This is not relevant to me. No, it's very relevant. It's a question of, do you know what he's saying or not? If you get misled or so, or confused by the surface level, then you think, oh, he's talking about Indian expectations of a monk. Oh, a monk should walk like this, a monk should sit like this. No, he's telling us, these are qualities of awareness and mindfulness. The relationship between body and mind. The more we learn about this body and mind, the more we will see how we can free ourselves from these obscurations. So then by relying on these methods of training, then more and more we have access and direct experience of this luminous, clear nature of mind. So 41 says, right? So we should always scrutinize the mind, always kind of, just as we should always know physically how we are, how the body is placed, walking, sitting, standing. Likewise, we need to know about the mind. Then 42, just as, when he was discussing about the body, he says, from time to time, even though primarily your sight should not look here, look there, he says, but from time to time, look up, look at around you, see people greet them with a kind word, uh, kind of acknowledge people, interact with people. Likewise, then here, although primarily the mind should be trained in a certain way, then he says, but also, so this is to show like it is not to be adhered to in a forced way, in a rigid way. And he says, in case of danger, on the one hand, like you find yourself in a dangerous situation, then single pointed mind, might not be possible. Or on the other hand, he says, in times of festivities, if you happen to be in a situation where people are celebrating, I mean, two choices, one, you say, this is too much distraction. You leave. Okay, that's fine. But if you cannot leave and you don't want to leave, then he says, don't make, I mean, he doesn't say this explicitly, but what's implied here is don't make other people uncomfortable and say, I'm going to meditate. Especially sometimes young people want to be difficult, I'm Buddhist now. Then, they're in like family is having a festivity of everything. You're like, no, I'm going to take my mala out. I'm going to make everyone feel awkward. I'm going to chant my mantra. Oh, I need to meditate. Everyone, quiet. Shut up. Shantideva says, here, act as it seems best, whether in times of danger or in times of festivities. Don't be so rigid either. For it is taught that rules of discipline may be relaxed in times of generosity. Here is emphasizing, like when you are in a situation where whether yourself or other people are engaging in generosity, meaning that they are like throwing a party, it's not saying like, oh yeah, you join them and drink and get drunk. You have your own discipline. You have decided what is helpful, what is not helpful for training your body and mind. You yourself don't need to get involved, but neither should you kind of be a pain in other people's enjoyment. Just do what you are able to do best, and don't forget, with yourself, you want to guard both body and mind. And so 43 here it says, even though verse 43 sounds like a general statement, more specific here he's saying, so 43 it says, when something has been planned and started on, attention should not drift to other things. With thoughts fixed on the chosen target, that and that alone should be pursued. Here, it sounds like good advice for any thing that you do. This is good advice. But here in this context, he's more talking about, hey, you Bodhisattva, don't forget, you generated bodhicitta. Yeah, you generated bodhicitta. So yes, under certain circumstance, you might have to relax a little bit your training or discipline so that you don't, create problems for others. But don't forget, you have made this vow. You should carry this vow. Yeah, so uh, yeah, so 44, he continues, he says, behaving in this way, all tasks are well performed, and nothing is achieved by doing otherwise. Meaning, we cannot achieve things if we are distracted, we don't commit to completing what we have started, then we will start, 50 different things, and nothing gets completed. So again, this is good advice generally, but here it has a specific context. It's saying, don't forget your bodhicitta vows. Don't forget your commitment that you've made. And so with regards to body and mind, and then speech included, we should guard them with mindfulness and vigilant introspection. When necessary, yes, it needs, you need to be flexible. Don't be difficult about it. Don't make it difficult for yourself and others unnecessarily. And especially out of your stubbornness, out of your pride. Oh, I'm doing something very important. Everybody should pay attention to me. I mean, it's very inspiring, in some ways. But at the same time, I often have, especially younger people who will come and say to me, what should I do? I want to meditate. But my roommates, don't take it seriously. They don't respect what I'm doing. I say, well, you just need to relax. I said, if you are in a situation where you can find a better living environment for your practice, great. But that's not always possible. I said, and if you're rigid about it, then now it's about fighting with your roommates rather than applying your teachings, applying those teachings. So likewise, we can do that in many other ways too, those us, there's a difference between applying the teachings and creating unnecessary upheavals. So here, Shantideva is advising, like, so even if you relax things a little bit, but then also don't forget what you have embarked on, what you have begun, which is this progress towards full awakening. Don't forget that. So he says in line in 44, if we act in this way, then the secondary defilement, the lack of introspection, which is this chapter, will not grow, will not increase. Meaning, if we don't forget our bodhicitta vow, this is the best way to ensure that introspection will not decline. Earlier, he gave, different methods to guard introspection. Here, the kind of like the best solution, the best secret, he shares. He says, remember what you have embarked on. And if you keep that clear, then you will be fine. So here to point out to the structure of this. So we have come to the section in this chapter where the bigger division of this section is into 3 parts. The first part is called the discipline of avoiding negativity. Second is the discipline of gathering virtue. And the third is the discipline of benefiting others. And so this covers the verses from 34 to 84. These 3 disciplines. So sometimes these 3 disciplines are said to be like, how do you summarize what bodhisattvas should train in? Then it says bodhisattvas should train in these 3 disciplines. First, avoiding negativity. Then when you have some degree of ability to do that, then you can start, thinking about gathering virtue. And when you have some degree of knowing what that means, how to do that, then you can practice the disciplines involved in benefiting others. So what we have looked at right now in this section is the first, the avoiding negativity. And there are 2 parts. First part we have just looked at, 34 to 44, is about purifying body, speech, and mind. Then the next class when we meet, from 45 to 58, it is how to protect our precepts from degenerating. How to protect our precepts of training body, speech, and mind from degenerating. And so these 2 sections constitute the discipline of avoiding negativity. I see that Adriana, you have a question, and then Judy after that. So go ahead, Adriana.
Sí. Antonio, le escribí en el chat, pero quisiera abundar, si me puedes ayudar con la traducción. Me llama la atención la palabra que usó Dorje Lopon de una situación peligrosa. ¿hay verdaderamente situaciones peligrosas o el peligro está en la mente? Esto lo pregunto porque no tiene mucho tiempo que yo empecé a estudiar esto en Casa Tíbet, Querétaro, unos meses antes de que empezó la pandemia. Y la primera clase o la segunda,
Antonio, I think she is gone.
Yeah. I think that she wrote something, maybe? No.
Did she ask enough of the question, or she didn't even get to the question yet?
Well, she asked the question. The question basically is what she wrote, that is there a dangerous experience outside, or is the danger just a tiger in the mind? If the mind is calm, is there a danger? And she was giving a context, but she, yeah.
I don't know. Can you all hear the question, Antonio? Okay, so Antonio said, translating for Adriana, and basically her question is apparently in the chat. She asked her question.
Sí, aquí estoy de regreso. ¿Se me escucha?
Can you hear Adriana?
Yes.
Sí.
So if basically it's the question in the chat, so waiting, you can translate that question into Chinese, then I will just briefly answer that. Something about tiger.
Dr. Lai, there are two questions in the chat. Which one?
Tiger.
Which? Oh, okay.
Something about tiger. Is the danger just the tiger in the mind, or is the danger out there?
Okay.
First of all, I don't know if there are tigers in Mexico. And if there are tigers in Mexico, then yeah, of course there are tiger danger that is out there. So maybe the context of the question will tell us more. So go ahead and ask, and Antonio, if you can translate, Yeah, of course, if there are tigers in Mexico, then yeah, tigers are dangerous,
Adriana?
Al contrario, lo que yo estoy comentando es que yo recuerdo que en esta clase de Tony Karam, él nos explicaba que los tigres no están afuera, que cuando una mente está en calma no hay peligro. Aunque haya realmente tigres, una persona puede estar en un bosque con muchos tigres, pero en su mente no hay tigres, no hay peligro. Y también lo dice Yogananda en su libro de autobiografía de un yogi, habla de esto. Los tigres realmente, no importa en qué país estés, están en tu mente o no. Si tu mente está en calma, no hay tigres, no hay peligro. Por eso me llamó la atención la palabra situación peligrosa. ¿Realmente hay situaciones peligrosas? ¿O el peligro está en nuestros hábitos mentales? De sentirnos tal vez amenazados o en peligro. Pero si alguien no se siente amenazado o en peligro, pues no va a experimentar estos tigres.
Y bueno, pues habla un poco de que, I'm sorry, I didn't switch to English. That she said that she heard these teachings from Tony Karam in Casa Tibet, Mexico, about that if the mind is is calm mind, then even if there are tigers, well, there is no danger because in a calm mind, this doesn't exist. And she also said that she read this in Yogananda's autobiography, that the tigers are in your mind only. And in these dangerous situations, but if you have a calm mind, then you are not going to feel danger. And that the danger or the fear of danger comes from the mundane habits. And if we teach our mind, well, we wouldn't feel this danger. So she is actually, well, her actual question is if this danger actually exists.
Waiting, can you hear this or no? Oh, okay. She elaborates, Adriana elaborates further and said, she has heard other teachers said, if your mind is really calm, even if there is a tiger out there near you, you cannot be harmed. And then she quoted that reading, for example, this very famous spiritual book, spiritual biography of Yogananda, some Hindu guru, about how, again, that shows that, you know, if your mind is really strong, then there is no danger that can come from outside. So, you know, so then the question is there any real danger that comes from outside, or it's all just inside? My answer would be, if this belief inspires you to train more in calming your mind, then it's good to believe this, but please don't go into jungles where there are tigers. I have to confess that my faith is not so strong. Because I'm pretty sure, and reason my faith is not so strong is not just my belief, you know, but I know, you know, like, even if my mind is very calm, very clear, very strong, you know, if I step out into traffic without looking, I'm pretty sure I'll get hit. nature of vehicles moving in high speed when met with a sudden object unexpected, meaning my body, is that the vehicle cannot stop in time and my body cannot withstand the impact, and suffering will arise. Nature of hungry tiger meeting walking lunch is that walking lunch will be much appreciated by hungry tiger. It is this aspect of the Buddha's teachings that really inspires me, really shows me that I really appreciate. There are other ways of appreciating the Buddha's teachings, and as I say, if they can be inspiring for you to train your mind, very good. But for me, it's this very this understanding the nature of phenomena. When certain phenomena meet certain conditions, then certain results are going to come. For me, this is most inspiring about the Buddha's teachings. Judy?
It occurs to me as we're studying this that particularly in the US, and of course everywhere, we're confronted by so many images with their fast cars. When we watch a movie, particularly action movies or TVs with commercials, the images come at us so fast. Every second there's a different image. And if we're not training ourselves in another way, the primary habituation of distraction is coming outside to us. And we are sort of not even appreciating how much that influences what we do when we're not watching an action movie kind of thing. And it's that inspires me to try to do this, because we're constantly habituating distraction.
Oh, totally.
I hadn't really thought about it in that fashion, but that's what we're doing.
Totally. Can you all hear the? Yeah, go ahead and translate. That's why Kyoba Jigten Sumgun, contrary to the more general opinion, the more general opinion, it says, Buddha says, there's virtue, there's non-virtue, and then there's like neutral, right? Then Kyoba Jigten Sumgun says, actually in terms of our habits, our actions, it's either virtue or non-virtue. So then again, on the surface, it sounds like he's contradicting what everybody says. Oh, Buddha says, no, there's virtue, non-virtue, and then there's neutral. But here, what Kyoba Jigten Sumgun is pointing out is, if we are not habituating habits of happiness, then there's only one alternative. We are habituating habits of suffering. So we have to choose, So what looks neutral, in fact, is not neutral. We are being habituated. So we have to be vigilant in that sense of like understanding that I'm either habituating, I'm either further getting entrenched in habits of suffering, or I am resolving to habituate, to become familiar with habits of happiness, skillful states of mind, removing mental defilements. So we have to be intentional about it. Peter, go ahead. Unmute yourself. You have to unmute.
There.
Yes.
Yes, I want to thank you. I think it would be nice if I could have a list of all the different types of distractions in reading Buddhist literature. We often have long lists, and I know that there are certainly a variety of different kinds of distractions, and I'm very easily distracted. So I'd like to have a list so I can check off how I can focus on that. If you know any lists of all these different types of distractions, but I suspect most of our distractions are primarily our own mental processes and not necessarily so much. I mean, we say it's other things, but it's because we want to do something else. Well, anyway, thank you very much. Wonderful presentation. If you do, let me know. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead and translate the question. And yes, Buddhists have lists, you know, many lists. Yes, there's a list of distractions. Then that list also becomes a distraction. But the key distraction, as you already said, you know, is whatever that. So if you want to list, a very easy list is the 8 worldly concerns. That's the main culprit in terms of distractions. So these 8 worldly concerns fall into 2 columns. One column, like, one column, dislike. 4 things that we like, 4 things that we dislike. Then, so here, you know, whether we like or we dislike, they are all distractions, because what do they distract us from? They distract us from the goal of freedom and benefiting beings. From the perspective of Bodhicharyavatara, it's the bodhicitta. So whatever distracts us from bodhicitta, and the biggest distraction from fulfilling our bodhicitta vow are basically what's known as the 8 worldly concerns. So if you just Google the 8 worldly concerns, you'll get that. The 8 worldly dharmas. Those are the main distractions that we need to be free from. So when we get to chapter 8 in Shantideva, the chapter on meditative concentration, he will, you know, give a full treatment of distractions, which is what meditative concentration is an antidote to. Larry?
Thank you, Dr. Lai.
Mm-hmm.
I think Judy's comments about distraction and Peter's questions are both very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
From my perspective, we are living in an environment where there are whole industries devoted to distracting us, devoted to occupying our attention,
Mm-hmm.
and manipulating our even what we think about. When you start looking around, you'll see that we're constantly under a barrage of distractions from media, social media, advertising, all publications, the so-called news and entertainment. All these things are designed to distract us. Many of these industries have people that study what is needed to be done to get our attention and to motivate us to think in certain ways, to do certain things, to buy certain things. So from my perspective, I think it's very important just to become aware of who is trying to distract you. And even our self-motivation, we're very concerned about entertaining ourselves. It's a distraction. So our whole environment is full of things that we can latch onto to be distracted, or where people are deliberately trying to distract us. There's no billboards out there telling us to study Dharma or to remind us what the principles are that we're studying here. But there are many, many other things out there that people are trying to distract us with, even with our own ideas.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Yes. This problem of distraction, whether now, whether the Buddha's time, it's the same problem. Here, from the Buddha Dharma's perspective, it actually doesn't matter so much who is trying to distract us, it says, because all distractions, if it distracts you from fulfilling the two bodhicittas, then they are distractions. During the Buddha's time, they say your family is your distraction. Your attachment to your family is a distraction. So Buddha is not even talking about, people with negative intentions trying to distract you. In fact, he says of the two, the enemies that are trying to distract you, he says, it's easier to get rid of them. Yeah? It's the objects of your attachment that is more difficult to be rid of. So the objects of our attachment, meaning people we like, opinions we like, news we like, food we like, Buddha says, those are even harder to be free from. So the eight worldly concerns, is primarily, there it doesn't say, where it comes from, who has designed it. Yeah, of course, but even that can become distraction. But if we focus on our own likes and dislikes, our own, likes of gain, dislike of loss, our like of praise, our dislike of blame, that is the primary culprit that the Buddha is interested in having us see and having us be free from. Yes. So just as I answered Peter's question cheekily about the list, I say even those lists, if you don't know how to relate to them, they can turn into a distraction. Likewise, if we get carried away by, oh, businesses are trying to distract me, oh, government is trying to distract me, oh, Russians are trying to distract me, oh, like whoever is trying to distract me, then that itself, becomes a distraction. Because the Buddha points at, back to like, where is that distraction? It comes down to our three poisons. So there's a story, a great story. I'll end with this story. Saraha, a great Mahasiddha, said to be one of Nagarjuna, the great Nagarjuna's teachers. But Saraha was, he dwelt in the forest and he made his living making arrows, which is a little controversial, by normal standards. Arrow is a weapon. A good Buddhist should not be making weapons. But the story says he makes arrows for a living. Anyway, he was already very advanced practitioner. And he was a householder. So his wife, supports his Dharma practice. So one morning, as he was about to begin his meditation practice, he said to the wife, he said, for lunch today, make some radish curry. He said to the wife, make some radish curry for lunch today. Say, I'm going to meditate now. So he starts. Then that day it said that his meditative practice was so powerful that he went into a state of meditative equipoise for 12 years. According to this story, for 12 years. So, of course, an hour into this, the wife, is starting to build the fire. 2 hours into this, the curry is like, boiling. And 3 hours into this, the wife keeps looking, the husband is still meditating, 12 years later, finally, the husband came out of the meditative equipoise. And the minute he came out of meditative equipoise, he goes, is the curry ready yet? Is my curry ready yet? So it says at that moment, the wife, took the pot of like, completely deteriorated curry, 12 years, it's been sitting there. She took the pot and she smashed the pot in front of him and said, you useless practitioner, for 12 years, you enter into meditative equipoise. And the minute you came out of the meditative equipoise, that distraction of your curry is the first thing that came up. And she said, I wasted 12 years waiting for you. Then she stormed off, and it says in that moment, Saraha had an awakening. And it says that he made a breakthrough there. His wife smashing this pot. You see, distractions. Chanchu Semchu Rinpoche Ma Ge Ba Nam Ge Gyunche Ge Ba Nyam Ba Me Ba Yang Gone Gondu Bel Shu. Okay, ta-ta, everybody. Reminder that this coming Tuesday, we won't have class because that day I'm transiting between airports. So the next class will be next Saturday.
Thank you, Dr. Lee.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Gracias, Dr. Lai.
Good night.
Gracias, Dr. Lee.
Thank you.
Yeah.